I call the member for Burdekin.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise to make a brief contribution to the Health and Other Legislation Amendment Bill. Mr Deputy Speaker, by far and away, health issues comprise the majority of the workload that comes through my electorate office. And when you consider that for 4 long years we've been battling to get a permanent doctor at Clermont and places like Dysart and Collinsville, you start to appreciate the challenges of providing a health service in rural and regional communities. 4 long years in Clermont, serviced by locums, with the Mackay Health Service having to scrabble at times to find locums to go and service that community. A community that used its own initiative and formed Clermont for Doctors. Currently, Janelle Otto and her team out there doing a fantastic job, but an indication of just how difficult it is and the lengths that these communities are going to attract a doctor, that they have sought and secured funding from a mining company, they have sought and secured funding from their local community to try and put together a package to attract a doctor to that locality. And I've listened to the contribution from those opposite who have crowed long and loud during the course of this debate about all these extra doctors in Queensland and how fantastic it is and the rural generalist pathway. Well, that doesn't necessarily apply in places within my electorate. No medical superintendent at Clermont, Thierry, Dysart, the one doctor at Dysart starting at 7 in the morning and finishing at 11 at night, working all weekend. No second doctor at Collinsville. The doctor there overworked. It got to the stage, Mr Deputy Speaker, I brought the federal government's Rural Health Commissioner through my electorate last year. She was mortified at the workload that these doctors were subjected to and the fact that after 4 years we're still calling for doctors, permanent doctors in these localities across some of these areas. And when you talk to Clermont for Doctors, and I know they've been working recently with Mackay Health Service to come up with an alternate model, it comes down to putting together a package that will attract doctors to these areas, that will meet their needs, because it's one thing to get their interest, but it's another thing to actually attract them to move to these localities and stay and work in those localities. And it's not a matter as if you can just drive up the road 10 minutes to the next hospital or to the next doctor. If you live in Clermont, you get a 4-hour drive to Mackay, an hour-plus drive to Emerald. And when you have elderly residents who never normally drive being forced onto the highway to drive to those localities, you appreciate just how dangerous that is. And it disappoints me that at the last election this government made a commitment to put dialysis chairs at Clermont and then reneged on that commitment. Because if you're going to go and secure or access dialysis and you're forced to drive to Mackay or, heaven forbid, Townsville, then that becomes a huge burden on those particular individuals and on their families. So I want to highlight here today that we still have a rural doctor crisis. We still have enormous challenges in securing permanent doctors to these localities across Queensland, not only in my electorate but in a lot of rural areas of Queensland. And there needs to be a real commitment. There needs to be a real commitment to address that, because, as I often say, just because you live in the bush shouldn't mean that you're subjected to health services or a lack thereof when you need it. We're trying to attract people to the bush, and one of the first questions they ask is, what's the medical services, what's the schooling? And if you can't put a tick in those 2 boxes, then they won't go there. And so I'm not about to give up that fight, and on behalf of Clermont for Doctors here tonight, I want to reaffirm the need for a permanent doctor to be placed in these localities, in particular Clermont, who have done it so tough for so many years.